He's Frank Schwab. She's Jori Epstein. This is Inside Coverage. I'm Jason Fitz. I should tell people that. Where we give you the why and the how of everything happening in the NFL. We know that. And guys, usually I come in here and we, do the little dance, start seeing how everybody is. But there's drama. It feels like every week there's drama when we connect. I don't know what happens, but there's something about Wednesday mornings that make it a big day. The big news of the day is that Anthony Richardson has been benched. And I'm not just talking about benched for the day, not benched for the week. No. Shane Steichen, the head coach of the Colts, has made it clear that Joe Flacco is their quarterback moving forward. So let's start with the very basic here. Frank, you surprised?
Yes and no. I think that it's a stunning move in that it's a guy who was the fourth pick of the draft, who you knew what this project was going to be and that was going to take a long time. But you watch Anthony Richardson play quarterback and you say they just can't keep doing this. They can't. Again, and I equated this to the Cleveland Browns, and I'm glad Charles isn't here to bust on me for changing the subject. But let's compare the Browns situation to the Colts situation. The Browns let their season completely fall to waste. Just throw it in the trash because we have to protect the feelings of a $230 million quarterback. You should have been able, and I don't know how Kevin Stefanski looks at those guys in the eye right now and says they're giving their all. I mean, they basically punted a season. I think Shane Steichen was given the same kind of conundrum of, I can't go in that locker room and have any respect among the guys. They know that the kid shouldn't be playing right now. He's 44% completion percentage. That's just not NFL football. Joe Flacco gives them a chance to go make the playoffs. They're 4-4. They're in this thing. You can't just look a possible playoff run in the eye and say, nah, we need to develop the kid. So I get it from that aspect. It still is stunning, though, when you consider how much they invested in Anthony Richardson, and now it's almost like a reset. You got to start this thing over. You got to take a step back and say, how do we get this guy? He needs a play to get better, and now he's not going to play because Joe Flacco, hopefully for them anyway, takes them to the playoffs.
Frank is a little more sensitive to the feelings of the rest of the locker room than I am. I think that as the Indianapolis Colts, you draft this guy, you know he's a project, you know he's an adventure. I talked to Chris Ballard, the Colts general manager, at training camp last year. So that was going into Anthony's official rookie season, though he's basically still a rookie because he's played 10 career games through that year and a half, given his season-ending shoulder surgery last year. And Ballard said, look, we know there's going to be ups, we know there's going to be downs, but if you look at the history of the quarterback position, you just got to stick with them. And the line I come back to is he said, they go through that and you just have to stick with them and let them learn and grow and don't jump off the abyss and lose yourself. And I'm like, are we not in the abyss now? I just think this is crazy. I think that if you want to draft a project, you need to commit to the project. Yes, I understand your comparison to the Cleveland Browns in the sense that a quarterback on the roster is more able to help you win. What are you going to do about it? But the thing about Anthony Richardson is you drafted him knowing this was going to be a project and you need to give him that time to develop. Also, we really didn't see many highlights from Deshaun Watson this year. We just saw a lot of ineffective offense, no third down conversions, all of that type of stuff. Anthony Richardson had the highs. He just had a lot of lows too. And so I think that it's a very short-sighted move. And I know that's not breaking news for them to make this decision. And then for Shane Steichen to say right before we started recording, hey, by the way, this is not a 1 week benching. This is for the foreseeable future. Okay, well, now what? Now what do you do with that draft capital that you invested? Because, yeah, do I think Joe Flacco is more likely to get them to the playoffs this year? Yes. Do I think he's more likely to help them with that stretch they have coming up where it's the Vikings, the Bills, the Jets, and the Lions? Yes. But you had Carson Wentz, you had Matt Ryan, you had Phillip Rivers. Like, you know what it's like to have a Band-Aid. You wanted your answer, and now you just completely abandoned ship with this project that for 2 years you've been telling us you believed in.
Don't you think, Jori, at some point, you just have, you got to play the better guy, right? Like, this is, again, Anthony Richardson, I do think he has a lot of talent. We know that, but he was obviously overdrafted. He basically was Joe Milton being drafted 5 rounds earlier. Like, I mean, you draft a guy like this later because he's a project and needs developing. You don't draft him 4th overall, but that's water under the bridge at sunk cost. Don't you think at some point you need to say, we could win football games right now with Joe Flacco? They know what the offense looks like with Joe Flacco. I think all 3 of us would agree. The Indianapolis Colts are a better football team on Sunday with Joe Flacco playing quarterback. I mean, don't you think that has to matter in this equation?
I'm jumping in here. I don't think that matters.
Really?
Because realistically, no matter what we're talking about for the Colts this year, the minute you take a quarterback in the top 5 of the first round of the NFL draft, you're telling people you want to find out what your long-term answer is. So my question here is, what has Anthony Richardson done that's been unexpected? Jori makes a great point. He's played 10 games, and they've been 10 games of wildly inconsistent football, which is what anybody that studied the draft and anybody that studied Anthony Richardson in college should have expected. So you can't suddenly veer off your game plan, your business plan, your long-term plan at the position 10 games in. So what? You make the playoffs this year with Joe Flacco. How's that going to help you next year when you still don't know if you have a quarterback? How's that going to help you in 2 years when you're still trying to figure out how to win your division against CJ Stroud? How's that going to help you in 5 years when you're sitting here saying, we don't have a quarterback that can beat Mahomes? Like, you took this kid, the same organization, the same regime took this kid. They had to know from the minute they drafted him that this was going to be a long-term project. You bounce on that long-term project now. What you're really doing is you're at this point, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. You're helping yourself right now, but you're hurting yourself so much for the next several years. Who cares? The Colts aren't going to win a Super Bowl this year. So all they've done is trash the quarterback position for the long-term future to try and win 9 games. Like, who cares?
Okay, first of all, I think I'd like to note that Fitz definitely robs Peter to pay Paul on 80% of episodes of Inside Coverage, and I am not exaggerating when we're on, when we're listening, all of the things. Going back to Anthony Richardson, he had 13 starts in college. That's not very many. But when I look at what happened with Anthony Richardson here, when I look at what the 49ers did with Trey Lance to trade up, get him 3rd overall, and I have a lot of respect for Kyle Shanahan as an offensive mind and a talent evaluator, I think if you guys aren't willing to let them develop, don't draft them. If you're not willing to sit them, don't draft them. Like, we are in this era where teams say, no, they have to play right away. And you guys and I have different perspectives on this. But if you think this guy needs time, and you should be able to tell that if you are running a football team, then wait to start him. Don't bench him. We've now seen Bryce Young and Anthony Richardson get benched. And I think it's because this league is just too impatient to let guys learn. And I really think this league needs to question whether they believe that guys who need learning on the job, because they're clearly not there. And I'm not saying that, oh, they're not perfect. Like, everyone's going to continue growing. But there's a difference between the Jaden Daniels, who has 55 starts in college, and the Anthony Richardson, who has 13 starts in college and not much high school experience either, which is similar to Trey Lance. Like, if you're not willing to sit through that, then don't try and project. Like, just get quarterbacks you're actually going to be willing to allow develop, because if not, you're just wasting not only the years that you kind of play him, but also this draft pick.
I agree with a lot of the points, right? I will say that, but I think what you guys are missing is, and Fitz used the term inconsistent. He was playing inconsistent. There was nothing inconsistent about this. He was consistently awful. He was consistently probably the worst passing quarterback we've seen in a long, long time. Like, there's no inconsistent about it. Like, he was awful. He was terrible. And I think the Colts just made an admission that we can't just continue like this. This is not good for our product in any single way. And having him play through this, there really were, he could throw the ball a country mile. Great. Good for you. There really were no signs this was getting better. So I don't think this was one of those where you see some progress and, okay, we're going to stick with the kid the rest of the way because he is progressing and we can see some good things. There are some bad things. No. It was just all bad. I think this is just an admission. We got to try something different. We got to sit him down. We got to Jordan Love him for a while. We have to.
This is not Jordan loving him. Jordan Love did not start at the beginning.
But they made a mistake with that. They made a mistake.
So different.
They did. But at some point, you can't compound a mistake. And I think they have to take a step back and say, what we're doing, just putting him out there, completing 40% of his passes is just, it's not working. That is not getting him any better. It's not getting us any better. I think all three of us would have to agree the Indianapolis Colts have a much better chance of making the playoffs this year. And there's value in that. Like, I don't want to just skip over that. Like, it's a nothing. Like, well, if you're not getting any closer to the Super Bowl, then it's not worth it. No, it's worth it in the NFL to make the playoffs. That's what gives guys job security, players, coaches, executives. And you could learn from that. And I just think that this is a different plan the Colts had to take. They were admitting a mistake here. We shouldn't have been playing that guy. And they really shouldn't have been. I mean, they should have gone in a different path here. Even with the 4th pick, somebody else should have been playing. I get why they played him right away and all that. But right now, this is just an admission that they've made mistakes in his development. It was getting no better. It was actually getting worse. And they had to try something different here while giving their team a chance to make the playoffs, which I think Fitz is a Raiders fan. You have to understand this. Like, going to the playoffs is a valuable thing. thing. It is something good for your organization. It's good moving forward. It's good for Steichen. It's good for the players. I think that this move to me today makes sense in that it just was an admission of guilt, basically, by the Colts, and they have to try a different path with Richardson going forward.
Well, if that's the case, then as soon as they are either in, or if they do not make the playoffs, as soon as they're eliminated, put Anthony Richardson back in.
I agree with that. I do. As long as you feel good about where he's developing in practice, off the field, his habits, and you feel like, okay, we can put him in now and he's going to have a little more confidence. He's going to look like a better quarterback. Because right now it's just been awful. This is not NFL football Anthony Richardson has been playing. He was 2 of 15 the other day in the first half. Like, you don't even see that from a bad college quarterback. Like, this was just not professional.
I agree. I agree with that. But I think that the difference here, Frank, between other quarterbacks that are failing is that you had to know that the one thing Anthony Richardson needs more than any other quarterback you're mentioning through this process is time on task. Right. And so, like,
but I don't think he's getting any better. I don't think I think his guy lost his confidence.
How's he going to get better now? How's he going to get better? Like the reps
you thought
in practice,
he lost his confidence? Did you watch his comments after the game? He said he knows he's a great passer. He's been doing it all his life. He just plays quarterback differently than the rest of the NFL, and so you can't look at his stats the same way. Michael Vick didn't have great stats either, and he thinks he's better at running than every quarterback. And then he goes, okay, maybe not Lamar. This is not a guy who, at least, I'm not saying he didn't internally
on the field, I don't know confidence.
Externally, he has not lost confidence.
Externally. But I see a guy on the field who doesn't look, he is not playing like a confident quarterback. He looks like every pass is a shot put to him.
And I don't disagree with any of that, but the reps are so limited in practice, the way they run right now. You're going to get so limited, so few opportunities to become better at the craft. And the difference here, and look, Jori mentioned it earlier, 10 starts, right? 10 starts in the NFL, 13 starts in college. That magic number is 23. I talked to a couple of college guys the other day that said the magic number scouts are looking for right now from a college quarterback when they get drafted is 24. They want to have at least 24 games of film they can look at to be really comfortable with who a guy is going to be. And right now, we're seeing young quarterbacks come in and have tremendous success because some of them are blowing way past that 24. Some of them are getting into the 40s in these starts. So, like, you have a real body of work. The Colts made a conscious decision. Chris Ballard made a conscious decision, the GM, to draft a quarterback that had such a limited body of work. You had to at least let him get there. They haven't even let him get to that same number of 24. So how do they know what they have? If he stinks at this point, then somebody needs to be held accountable for why he stinks. Why was he overdrafted? Who did this? What is the mistake? You can't have it both ways. You can't come in and say, well, man, I really hope he wins the job long term. I hope we get him back. And then also say, well, but, you know, at the end of the day, he's not our starter right now, without admitting that there had to be a massive, colossal mistake somewhere in here. And the mistake to me with Anthony that's different than so many other quarterbacks is the guy he needs reps, and he's not going to get reps now anymore. You and I talked about it a year ago, Frank. The biggest mistake the Colts had, the biggest issue, I should say, the Colts had last year is that they won a lot of football games. So they got so far ahead of schedule that all of a sudden we forgot that there was a trajectory for Anthony Richardson. And now they're living by that schedule because they're winning games faster than people thought. They're a better team than people thought. Now all of a sudden you're blowing the schedule out the door for Anthony Richardson. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
I do understand, but I think that one of the big disconnects with all of us three right now is I believe that you guys think he would get better by playing, and I just think it's getting worse. I just think you need to try something different, and I get it. Usually, in most cases, you need to be on task, like you said, be on the job. You learn that way, but that's not working for him right now. And I just think he looks like a quarterback who just doesn't know what he's doing out there, and it's just getting worse and worse. And yes, externally, he's very confident. I get that. And maybe I'm trying to, play mind games with him and play amateur psychologist, and that's not always good. But when I watch him play the game, he just looks like a guy, like he's worse than last year. He's much worse than last year. He's 59%. If he was completing 59% of his passes, and he talked about, it wasn't always pretty stat-wise for Vic or these guys or whatever, that I agree with that. 59%, you could do that. You'd still be the worst completion percentage in the league, but 59% is doable. 44% is not NFL football. And you need to do something at that point to reset him, try in a different path, because this path was not working.
I think my problem is I don't believe that the NFL can currently draft a quarterback that needs the development and needs the reps and succeed in that, because either you have what the Carolina Panthers did, which Bryce Young was not in that category, to be clear, and you don't have enough talent around them for them to actually develop the way they need to, Or you have talent around them. You have the Colts situation where they also have some aging good players on contracts that are kind of reaching the end of that window. And the team is too good for him to develop without making the rest of the team mad. So whether you have wherever you are in your cycle, I feel like it's a lose-lose.
I think you're right. That's one of the vicious parts of this. And what's interesting to me when you start talking about the way these situations are going to go moving forward is that you see so much immediate success for certain guys, and now that leash is only going to get shorter. It's like, if we don't have CJ Stroud, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, like those guys are doing it in a matter of 4 weeks. I mean, yeah, if you're not winning games now, well, you must be a bum. Like, and I do agree, Jori.
What did Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix have in common? A ton of college experience. CJ Stroud at least had more of it also. When you look at the difference between, that's why I was even thinking like why I think this is so different than the Bryce Young situation. And among the reasons are Bryce Young started 27 games in college and attempted 949 passes. Anthony Richardson, 13 starts, 393 attempts. So this is not just about starting games. He also had close to a third of the number of passing attempts. And so if you're trying to understand, okay, what has he seen in terms of defensive coverages he has to read? How has he gotten his accuracy? How has he looked at, okay, particularly the intermediate in the field, because the short should be easier, and the downfield passing, we know that he does have a talent for that. Like, those are the things he didn't have, but they knew that coming in.
I think that's part of all of this. You say they knew that coming in. Is it not fair and reasonable right now for all of us to be saying, I want to hear from Chris Ballard, the GM? Because Shane Steichen can make a decision, but like,
I don't think they thought it was going to be this bad. We're underrating how bad this was. 44% is... It's outrageous.
Frank,
like it is so bad.
Don't we live in a world where completion percentage matters, but it is like an indicator, not the final number?
I do get that. I do get completion percentage is not the be all end all. But again,
when his
44%.
left tackle or whoever it was is stepping on his foot on one play and his receivers have dropped 11 passes in the 10 games he's played, according to PFF, I do think those things matter.
They do. But I think that
touchdown
we're overrating that too.
Penalty.
Like, this isn't just like, oh, well, go back to week. Like, I think we talked about this, Fitz, on Sunday night. Go back to week 2, and it was 63%. Now it's 44%. And now it's no. He hasn't been above 50% all season. Like, and again, I get completion percentages is one data point, but it is a pretty damning data point when it's 44%. It's like if a hitter in baseball is going up and striking out 50% of the time, you just say, we can't deal with this. This is way too high. Even though other guys in the modern baseball world are striking out 35% and still being good players, you get to a certain threshold where this is just not acceptable. We can't function this way as a team. And I think that that's where they got with Anthony Richardson, where this wasn't just, if he would have played like he did as a rookie, again, 59% is bad. 59% in the modern NFL is not very good. It'd be last in the league this year. If he was at 59% this year, he'd still be their starting quarterback. And they'd probably be like 6-2. 44%, you just get to a point where he's so inaccurate as a quarterback. He's so rudimentary as a passing quarterback that you can't keep functioning this way, especially when you've seen how good your offense can be with Joe Flacco. That's another part of this thing. If Joe Flacco had never played, maybe there's not this kind of desire to see what the team could do the rest of the season with him, but they did see him play, and they saw a really, really good passing offense, very similar to the Browns last week with Jameis, where you say, this is what we can be. This is a lot better than the product we're putting on the field right now.
If I'm a quarterback this offseason going to free agency, I am not signing with whatever team Joe Flacco plays for, because like after what he did for the Browns, it seems like everyone around the league is like, oh, well, we can make the playoffs with him, so that's fine. Forget anything else. But I do think that when you look at Chris Ballard and what he's done, because they tried a lot of different creative Band-Aid type ways to get talented quarterbacks at the end of their career after it. And I do feel a little sorry for them, because a lot of this is still fallout from the Andrew Luck retirement, which Andrew was well within his prerogative to do, and he seems to be doing what's best for his life, and I support that, but it obviously had a pretty seismic impact on the Colts. I think what's interesting is I was crunching numbers last night, and because this is what I do at 10 p.m. on a Tuesday, I made a spreadsheet of every single team, every single general manager, and what year they were hired. And Chris Ballard hasn't been in the job forever, but he's been in the job since 2017. The only general manager who has been in their job longer without playing in a Super Bowl is the Miami Dolphins' Chris Greer. So again, 2017, not that long ago when Chris Ballard got his job. And since then, they've been to the playoffs twice. They've won one game, but they have not had playoff success. And I think that's the problem, is that we're in this league where you don't get 10 years to figure it out. You typically get 3, maybe 4 or 5. And so the guys who have been there longer, Les Snead figured it out. Jason Light figured it out. Jerry Jones, was funny when we were editing the story last night. Our editor, Dan Agnew, was like, Jerry hasn't won Super Bowls. I'm like, no, he actually did. He won 3 in the 90s. He's like, oh, well, those are so long ago. Should we really count them? But all the people who have been in their job longer have made it to a Super Bowl. Most of them have won. And like John Lynch clearly made it to 2. And no one's concerned about John Lynch's ability to do his job, I don't think. But it's a problem because if Jim Irsay really wants to take a look at it, which he might not, because patience has been a pretty key roster building strategy of the Colts. I would say after the Packers, they really are up there. And you see that around the league with Andrew Berry, the Browns general manager. We were talking about what he did. When I talked to him about quarterback development during training camp this year, he was like, well, when I look at what happened with Peyton Manning and how his career started, that really influenced me. And so anyone who has ever worked for the Colts organization is influenced by a more patient approach to the quarterback position, which is why I think it's even more interesting that that is the team making this decision.
By the way, real quick, I need to mention this because the other part of this story is Joe Flacco. You want a wild ride? You want to get on a roller coaster for a minute? Go to Joe Flacco's Pro Football Reference page because it is absolutely just absurd. He was like washed like 7 years ago. And when he was with the Broncos, it was just awful. And then he's with the Jets. Like, he couldn't even beat out like the Zach Wilsons of the world where he was with the Jets a few years ago. And he was totally dusted. And all of a sudden, he's like an automatic 300-yard machine. Like, put Joe Flacco in your lineup. You're going to get 300 yards and a win. I don't know any other case like this. Like, maybe like Steve DeBerg back in the day. Like, a guy who was just totally done. And then like at age 38, 39, whatever Joe is right now, he has completely reinvented himself. Like Fitz said, if Joe Flacco's my backup, I'm like, I'm getting benched at some point for this guy. And Joe Flacco like 2 years ago was completely done as an NFL player. It's absolutely crazy, his career arc.
Yeah, Joe Flacco, elite. We're still having that conversation. Let me ask this. You mentioned all those GMs. And one thing I've said repeatedly about the drafting of Trey Lance, your GM and your team have done a great job when you trade up to get a quarterback at the top of the first round. You fail and nobody has any recourse for it. I think that speaks to how lucky they were to get Brock, obviously, but also just how well they've done their jobs. That being said, Bryce Young has come up a couple of times. Did I miss something? Like, Bryce came back after being benched. Still didn't look very good. Like, what is the end goal here? Like, if you're Anthony Richardson, and even if you want to find that case study where you're like, well, you know what, Bryce took a little bit of time off, came back in, played much better. No, he didn't. Like, if I'm Anthony Richardson at this point, Jori, you said earlier, once the season goes off the rails, you got to bring him back in. Yeah, but also, like, that never works. It's just, I don't know how there can be a future between the Colts and Anthony Richardson, because if he's so bad that time on task won't help him, then he's not going to make it in this league. And if what he needs is time on task and they won't give it to him, then he's not going to make it in this league. I struggle to find a way that Anthony Richardson makes it in this league if there isn't a real path cut out that works for the player and what he actually needs.
Right, and I think that is the problem because, again, even when you look at Joe Flacco, going back to him, he started his career in Baltimore, played there for all those years, and now they have Lamar. Like, that is an organization that knows how to develop quarterbacks. Yes, he played right away, but think about the foundation that was around him because it's a well-run organization. At least if you have a Sam Darnold type situation, you played for enough years, that's probably going to take you some time to rebound. But, like, Anthony Richardson's not going to have played. He's not going to have the type of development that appears to be conducive to what he's looking for. I don't know. I think that, like, he's already worked with the private quarterbacks coach. How much more are you going to be able to get? I really don't think you're getting much of practice. So I do think that the Colts will need to try him again because compared to the San Francisco 49ers situation, they had a guy in Brock Purdy who, yes, he was final pick of the draft, et cetera, but he was young. He was on a rookie contract and he was able to be built around. Joe Flacco, you're not building around for the next 4 years. And so I think the Colts have to try it again, but it is definitely going to be a hard sell.
And what happens, by the way, if the Colts do make the playoffs? Like, that just like would make the Anthony Richardson stuff look even so much worse, right? Like, he'd be like, my goodness. And I think they can.
No, because no one thought that Anthony Richardson playing right now was primarily about winning this year. It's about developing a foundation.
Right. But I thought they thought he would be mediocre. To your point about Chris Ballard, I think Chris Ballard's done a really good job with one, probably, I think we'd have to say that big mistake. He's built a team that is 500 with a quarterback who is completing 44% of his passes. That's actually, in a weird, sadistic way, kind of impressive. Like, I think Chris Ballard has put together a really good roster. And if I had to predict right now, I don't think there's going to be this point where you turn back to Anthony Richardson because your season's done. because I think the Colts are going to be in playoff contention the rest of the year. I really do. I think that with Flacco, this team is going to be re-energized. They're going to play well. I think the Colts are going to be a playoff contender the rest of the year. And then what happens? Like then it just makes it all look like, wow, it's almost like the Deshaun thing. I think there's so many parallels between the Colts and the Browns in different ways, but in this way that you look at how much better the product is when you have a competent quarterback, that it just makes the original quarterback look even worse. And I think that's going to happen with Anthony Richardson going forward.
Frank, you're the great historian here. I'm trying to think of a first round, wow, I can't believe they picked that guy quarterback that's been traded or gone to another team very early in their career and had success there. Like Justin Fields was fine.
I think Plunkett.
We're going all the way back
reference.
to like the 80s.
That's a really old school reference.
I mean,
but
because
it doesn't happen often.
Like Zach Wilson, okay.
No.
I mean, Justin Fields, like I had somebody around the Titans
Baker,
the other day tell
Baker
me
Mayfield, maybe. I mean, he's kind of gone on that.
Yeah.
That's fair. That's fair. Baker's
but it's rare. Yeah,
Baker didn't suck. Baker didn't suck. Baker
when he didn't have his shoulder injury, he was fine. He had a torn shoulder. And that's the thing. Baker and Sam Darnold each got experience, so they understood what they were working with before they came back. I mean, Geno also, he understood what he was working with before he had some degree of resurgence. I think it's really challenging if you don't have that body of work to draw upon.
Yeah, Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, Kenny Pickett. I had somebody tell me the other day that the Titans are going to try and trade Will Levis this offseason. Those
guys, the story isn't written on it yet.
I'm going to try to trade in my Honda Civic for a Ferrari too.
Yeah, I mean,
whatever.
It's like I wouldn't even give you a bag of sour apple Skittles at this point for that. Like that, it's hard for these quarterbacks once they're giving up early in their career. There's a difference between hey, I had some success, but man, I don't know.
One other thing I'll say is that an unexpected appreciation I gained from this whole Anthony Richardson situation and pairing it with Trey Lance is, given how hard it is for quarterbacks to come into the NFL with very limited experience, very limited ability to read the defense, or at least experience reading the defense, I should say, kudos to Kyler Murray for figuring this out. The guy had 17 career starts between the 3 he had at Texas A&M and then what he had afterward at Oklahoma. And I know that he's had ups and downs in terms of whether he's average to good versus great, but to be able to do what he has done at his height and with his limited college experience is so against all odds.
Yeah, you're 1,000% right. And by the way, keep an eye when we're talking about the draft this year. A guy like Cam Ward has started 49 games in college. All right. So in a copycat league, I think the NFL is going to keep looking at this and saying the more tape I can get. I know Shadur's only had 19 at Colorado, but he also had Jackson State. So getting to that coveted 24 number, it means something. We'll see what it means. I don't know what the future looks like for Anthony Richardson. I know the future looks like what the future looks like in the NFL trade deadline is next Tuesday. So we've had some big trades. We'll break them down and we'll figure out what it means for the league. We'll do it next. Trade deadline's coming up next Tuesday. Wait, Jori, is the trade deadline this a few days from now Tuesday or a week from a few days from now Tuesday?
A few days from now Tuesday.
So
election day and trade deadline day are the same day.
The election day,
cool.
Trade deadline,
we'll
and
trade
the first
players,
release
we'll trade a
of
president because Biden, either way.
We also have the first release of the College Football Playoff Committee's rankings on Tuesday. So it's gonna be a big day. Big day.
Sensory overload.
I can't imagine what anyone's going to be paying attention to. That being said, we've had some trades, but here's what hits me all. I don't know why I decided to go full y'all on this, but what hits me is aggressiveness. I'm not used to seeing, moves through the NFL trade deadline. I am for other sports. I think, you can look at late acquisitions made, in Major League Baseball and how they contribute to October baseball. You can look at the NBA and say, okay, I see who's aggressive. In the NHL, it happens a lot where a guy's moved at the trade deadline and suddenly it matters to the Stanley Cup run. I'm not used to it from the NFL standpoint, but Jori, I feel like good teams are being aggressive. We've seen Kansas City and Baltimore get into some of this action. I feel like good teams right now are looking around saying, I will not stand pat. I will do whatever it takes. And I'm not used to seeing that.
Yeah, the Chiefs definitely. I mean, I think on one hand, we have teams like the Bills and the Jets who are a little bit more creative. And getting guys like Amari Cooper and like Devontae Adams are going to cost more. And then you have a team like the Chiefs who says, okay, we'll get a linebacker, we'll get an aging receiver. We're not going to break the bank, but we're going to do something to try and win. You got the Baltimore Ravens, Deontay Johnson. It's notable that those are all AFC teams. And I think there's this, okay, if you're the Chiefs, how can we try and defend that third title? And if you're everyone else, you're like, if we have a good team or we think this is our year, because the Jets think it's their year whether or not they have a good team, then you want to do everything you can to try and beat Patrick Mahomes in the end, because you know that he's going to have the edge and he's always going to keep having that edge. So you got to do something. But I'm always a little hesitant on trades. And I know that I think Frank and I probably have different opinions on this, because I feel like Frank's always like, well, they could do this. Why aren't they trying? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, how often do trades like really make the difference? Like maybe sometimes, but is it really worth it in the long term? I don't know.
Well, look at like Deontay Johnson to the Ravens. I had looked at that trade and I went, he was free, literally free. There's like going to be a 12 pick difference in the 190s. And it's like, that is literally the NFL's version of here's just take Deontay off our hands. We don't care. We don't want him anymore. Maybe there's a reason for that, but I don't know why nobody in the NFL would offer more than zero for Deontay Johnson. The Ravens absolutely stole him. People are like, well, this doesn't help the Ravens' problems. Who cares? He's free. Like, sure, we'll take him. Why not? This trade deadline is very interesting to me, and I didn't really put it in this context until Fitz brought it up on Sunday night. That what is it? 10 teams have 2 or fewer wins, maybe 11. Like, there's a lot of teams that are just drawing dead right now. They're done, and you usually don't get that. And moving back the trade deadline a week adds to this too, where you have so many sellers right now. You usually don't have this many. Usually it's a handful of teams that are like, we're done, let's sell, whatever. Now you have 10 to 12 teams that are like, let's just trade. We're done. By the way, the one trade, like I did 10 trades that should happen for Tuesday, a post on Yahoo Sports. The one that came to my mind, and I know it's not going to happen, but it makes so much sense it should happen. Shouldn't the Jets trade Devontae Adams? Shouldn't they just flip him right now?
Idea.
I saw that.
Shouldn't they just flip him? Like, I mean, at this point, you're 2-6. You're like, well, we could be stubborn and not take the L. Like, that's fine.
But if you're
like,
Joe Douglas and you're on the final year of your contract and this Aaron Rodgers thing has not worked out for you, you're Jeff Ulbrich and you've already like struggled in your first few games. The team hasn't won in 5 games. Right. I mean,
there's some self-preservation going on.
Yeah, the decision makers are not looking long-term.
No. But if they were a smart franchise, which we're talking about the Jets, so we know they're not, they should be flipping Devontae Adams to the Chiefs. Whoever wants them. Like, it just makes too much sense for me. But I think there's going to be a great trade deadline again, because like you said, Jori, everybody's chasing the Chiefs. The Chiefs are loading up, and you have, again, 10 to 12 teams that are really in sell mode at this point. So there are a lot of good players available on the market.
Right now, there are 10 teams in the NFL, 10 teams that have won 2 games or less, a staggering amount. And of those 10, 6 have lost at least 3 in a row. So we're talking about 6 out of those 10 that are on bona fide, we suck, losing streaks. Like, that is just a level of wow. Like, to sit here and think that, oh my God, if you're the New Orleans Saints that have lost 6 games in a row right now, according to the way the tiebreakers work, you would have the 6th pick in the NFL draft. Like, it is just the level of suck this year is just crazy.
We never talked about this. What are the Saints doing extending Kamara and basically taking him off the trade block? We're really going to screw this up, Saints? We're really going to screw up the obvious thing, which is sell everything. Literally anything that's not bolted down in New Orleans should be traded away. Like, we have to get off this hamster wheel of just screwing with the salary cap and kicking all of the charges down the road so we can go 8-9 every year. This is making no sense. They are $93 million or $97 million over the cap already for next year. Any player who's in that locker room should be traded by next week. And they're not going to do it. They're going to screw this up. You can already see it coming, where we're going to get to the end of the trade deadline. We're going to be, what moves did the Saints make? And we're going to say, oh, none, because they're trying to chase 7-10 finish this year. It's impossible how they're going to screw this up, but they will.
All right, so let's look at how or if some teams can be fixed. You just mentioned a little bit of a strange strategy for the Saints. All right, can this team be fixed? Is there something out there? Jori, you know the Cowboys better than anybody. Like, all right, I'm making you are the queen of all NFL. You can fix the Cowboys. What out there can be done?
Yeah, assuming you don't have a time turner to go get Derrick Henry like 6 games ago so that he can run for you instead of run all over you. I really don't think so. I think that if you're this team, okay, on defense, what do you need? Well, you're getting Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence back eventually. On offense, you're not going to get a running back who's really going to change your fortune and get you to the playoffs, in my opinion. It's a little bit late for that. And so I think this is a team that's just going to say, like, let's get Dak and CD back on the same page. That was the investment that we made. I know no one likes when Jerry says all in, but he did pay Dak a whole lot lot of money. He did pay CeeDee Lamb a whole lot of money, and I expect them next summer to pay Micah Parsons a whole lot of money. And so I think at this point, it's kind of like get through the season, figure out where the problem is, and then get your new coach in the offseason. Like, I think that is more likely the plan. And I think it's the best case scenario to me for the Cowboys. I guess best case as they turn it around. The best realistic case scenario kind of feels like go hire Mike Vrabel this offseason. He'll get you that balance of like physicality, culture, former player that can offset the glamour of the star, and then have some like really bright offensive coordinator come in with him who is going to be able to give you a little more of the shifts and motions and Shanahan type stuff that you don't have with Mike McCarthy right now. Because while Mike's strategy can work, it worked when they had Brandon Cooks and like some of these other guys as their number twos. It doesn't really work right now with what they have at receiver, particularly when you want to be able to run the play action and you can't because everyone knows you're not running the ball effectively.
Yeah, I hate to even say this out loud. And I hope this is cut from the podcast because I know it's stupid saying it.
Stone, if you clip this, I'm not tweeting it.
Please. The Cowboys should still think that they can make the playoffs. Like, I get it. They have not looked good, but they're only 3-4. Like, it's not crazy for them to go on a run. This is still pretty early in the season. You can still save your season. The one move I saw for them is getting a running back, obviously. But Kamara off the market.
If you get a cheap running back, fine. But like,
that's exactly what I'm talking about, Jori. The running backs aren't going to cost that much. I looked at Raheem Mostert. I looked at Miami saying, Jalen Wright needs some reps. Devon Achan's back. You're 2 wins anyway. You're probably not going anywhere. Raheem Mostert's 32 years old, I believe, and still has a lot left in the tank. That just makes so much sense. A late round pick. Let's go. I'm not talking about the Cowboys
so you're
trading
putting
seconds
Zeke,
or whatever.
Dalvin Cook, and Raheem Mostert on the same team?
I'm putting Zeke probably the unemployment line. I'm putting Dalvin Cook like back on the practice squad. Like, these guys aren't helping you at all. I still think Raheem Mostert's a pretty good running back. Like, even at his age, he's got a good half season left in him. If I'm the Cowboys, I'm not necessarily selling and saying the season's over. There's still a long way to go, and I get it. It's not look pretty for them, but I do think there's some cosmetic things that they can do to fix some things at a low price. I'm not talking about trading seconds or thirds or anything like that. Low round picks, so you could fix a couple of your things that maybe you can make a run without mortgaging too much of the future. And it starts at running back for them. They need a running back so desperately.
Frank, what if I were to tell you that the next 4 teams the Cowboys play are the Falcons, the Eagles, the Texans, and the Commanders?
Well, not ideal. It's not what you want to see.
Pick a running back in the first or second round in the spring.
If only they could get a running back with a cap number of $5.1 million this year and $10.9 million next year. Oh, wait, that would be Derrick Henry, who they supposedly
We're
couldn't
going to
afford.
dunk on them forever over this, aren't we? Because
not as much as I'll dunk on the Titans, who suck, and let them walk out the door. I'll continue to say that. Okay, let's fix the...
Do you think the Titans would give back Tony Pollard for the year? That's what I'm thinking. That's what I really want to do. Tennessee say, okay, for the rest of the year, we'll give the Cowboys a loan on Tony Pollard back and the Chiefs a loan on L'Jarius Sneed back. Just give him back before next season.
I love that idea. Also, then, are the Saints going to trade Derek Carr back to the Raiders so the Raiders at least have a quarterback?
The Saints should trade everybody. Everybody. Saints, trade everybody. What do you do?
What do we do with the Browns? How do we fix the Browns who coming off big win? Maybe they don't need fixing. Maybe Jameis was all to fix it.
The Browns are fixed, but they're 2-6. They're 2-6. Like, you punted yours. I am going to be so mad about this for a long time. This is not the last time I will rant about this. The Cleveland Browns looked at their players, their fans, the entire organization in the face and said, we don't care about winning. We care about Deshaun Watson's feelings, okay? We care about chasing a sunk cost. We're going to go 1-6 trying to prove a point here instead of putting our best players on the field. That team would be like 5-3 right now. Jameis Winston been starting since week 2. And it was obviously week 1. Like, this is over. Like, just move on right now. Like, this is done. This is an incredible stat to me. And I wrote about this today. In games from late last season, kind of the start of the Joe Flacco era in Cleveland per se, in games started by either Flacco or Jameis Winston, they are 5-1. In games started by Deshaun Watson, they're 1-6. 5 of those 6 games for those 2 quarterbacks I just mentioned, 300 yards. Not one 300-yard game for Deshaun Watson his entire Cleveland career. He didn't even reach 200 yards this year. You punted your entire season for Deshaun Watson. Good job, good effort, Browns. Now you're screwed. Now you're 2-6. You ain't getting out of this. So are they fixed? Yes, they're a pretty good team right now. They're going to be good the rest of the year. They win in 8 or 9 games, make the playoffs. I'll tell you that. So it is going to be the 2024 Browns are a case study in how you screw yourself playing the wrong quarterback for all of the wrong reasons.
I agree overall that they play their own quarterback for the wrong reasons. I still disagree with your decision that you wanted to bench Deshaun Watson after week 1, which I think you probably still stand by, and I understand why. I don't think you can do that. I don't think that the Browns did this because they were caring about Deshaun Watson's feelings. I think they were like, we are desperate to make our investment work, and we have to keep trying.
That's so bad. It's such bad business. It's such bad business.
Stats you said are fantastic. Most of them are Joe Flacco's. So, I think Jameis Winston needs to do a little bit more before we give him all the Joe Flacco
And by the way,
credit.
I'm not even saying Jameis Winston's good. I don't think he's good. I just think he's light years ahead of the guy they were playing for the first 7 games.
How much do you guys think the play caller change matters? Because it is kind of interesting to me. Look, I voted for Kevin Stefanski for Coach of the Year last year. I think he's a great coach. I also had someone in the league tell me, hey, the fact that Kevin gave up play calling, right when Deshaun goes out, they didn't feel like it was a great look because they felt like he wasn't sticking with his plan, and he was kind of being like, oh, no, it wasn't me, it was Deshaun. And it was kind of an interesting point.
It is. I think it helped. It gave him a little boost and maybe some new ideas. And you catch Ravens by surprise in some ways, just because he got a new guy calling the plays. I still think Stefanski's a good play caller. I just think he made a horrible, horrible decision, if it was his decision, to keep with the wrong quarterback. I think that's 80% quarterback and 20% play calling.
I think there's reasons we should question whether much of anything that has happened with Deshaun Watson has been the GM or the head coach's decision.
Yeah, or the owner.
But that's why, look, I have no problem if Kevin Stefanski wants to give up play calling duties to, in some way, just chuck Deshaun Watson under the bus. He's earned that right. If he's been stuck with a quarterback he doesn't want because the owner doesn't want to admit it's a bad contract, this is his ultimate up yours to everybody. I slow clap that. Standing ovation to the whole thing. You stuck me with this quarterback. Fine. Let's make sure the world knows that everything is his fault. I'm all in for that. If this is a revenge play, it's beautiful.
Look at you being so petty. I love it. Now,
you want to tell me
I'm not crossing you now. I can't get on your bad side anymore. I know how petty you are now.
Now that I work out, this is a new angle to me. Now I talk my talk. All right, let's fix the Rams. Health alone, does health alone maybe fix the Rams? Are we do the Rams just need to get in a cryo chamber?
Yeah, that's the thing. I look at the Rams and the Eagles, and it's what's the difference between the games the Eagles won and the games the Eagles lost? Well, they're 4-0 with A.J. Brown. They do just fine with him. Devonta Smith not there for a game. The Rams, similarly, they still have the quarterback. Their defense is fine and was always going to be young and need to figure it out over time. But once you get Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, and Puka Nacua back, he's just fine. And I really regret that when we made our Thursday night picks last week, I said I really thought the Rams were going to do it, and I didn't go with them. But I do think that this is why also you don't trade Cooper Kupp, much less Matthew Stafford, because you still have the core. They just need to stay healthy. And they might not, but you shouldn't make decisions on the chance that someone might get hurt.
Yeah, I think for the Rams, I think that offensively, if they got these guys healthy, they're going to be really good. I think defensively they could use some guys. And we know that if they're not sellers or buyers, it's one or the other. They're not a sit pat type of team. So I could see them shaking some things up, going and getting some help for their defense, which they really, really need. I don't think they need any help to the offense. I think the offense is going to be really good the rest of the way. Maybe a veteran piece that they could use. I think that would really help them. It's so crazy that within a 5-day stretch, they win 2 games, get healthy. And like we've been talking about, all of a sudden it's a different world for them. 3-4, let's go. We're a half game behind first place in the NFC West. I think the Rams are in this thing. They should feel like they're in this thing. And knowing the Rams, they're going to be working the phones to try to get aggressive.
Yeah, I was talking to someone who works with an NFC West team, and I said something about just the other teams that if they want, I guess I kind of implied that any other team besides the Rams would need to reach the playoffs via wild card. And he's like, you're just that sure that the Rams are going to win the West? I'm like, I definitely have the most confidence in them. But I also thought it was interesting that there are people in that division who think the Cardinals should be the front runners going into next year for the division favorite. And I think that kudos to them for the way that they've gone about building their team and developing.
Kudos to us for going over 40 minutes into a show without saying the word Jets in any meaningful way. I think we've said
I think I did with Devontae Adams.
But meaningful.
Yeah.
In a deep way. Can we fix the Jets?
I also talked about the Jets as a team that thinks they're good but isn't good.
The Jets should be fired into the sun. They're done. They're
Wait,
totally
do you guys
finito.
know who Annie Ager, whatever,
yes.
her name is? Her videos. She's super talented. This week, her note on their Jet stuff was that Aaron Rodgers did his own research and came to the conclusion that he and the Jets had already won a Super Bowl together. And I was losing it.
That's amazing. That's really amazing. I still struggle with the concept of coming out of the darkness to go to the Jets feels like you kind of stayed in the darkness era. So I'm just saying, is there anything out there? Is there a great glimmer of hope that we can give all of the people that are starved for the Jets content they're not getting anywhere?
Yes, it's a dry desert of Jets content.
Where
can I find Jets
today?
content anywhere?
I am full on.
And we
jerk
get them
mode
on
today.
Thursday night. Oh my
more
god!
of my coffee.
No. Jets on Thursday night with sweet. No, the Jets are just a bad football. They're a bad. We're gonna get to that Thursday night game in a second. I don't really get the point spread there, but yes, Jets are a bad football team, and they should start trading guys right now. It's over.
Bring back Robert Saleh. That's actually, I think,
what
their
are
best
we
chance.
doing here? This is going to go down. There's going to be a documentary in 10 years about the Aaron Rodgers Jets, and it is not going to be a pretty one. Let's put it that way.
Does Robert Saleh, in your mind, Jori, is there some vindication for Robert Saleh, who I think got a lot of negative press when he was let go, and now you see everything else going the wrong way? I heard plenty of people on ESPN saying that Saleh wouldn't even get a look for another gig because of the way this Jets thing went crashing and burning. And now I'm seeing that it's still crashing and burning. Is there some saving grace for Robert Saleh's reputation out of that?
Yeah, it's interesting you thought that there was so much negativity on him when he got fired, because I felt like the negativity was much more directed toward Aaron Rodgers potentially forcing, if not, or at least influencing this decision. I think that Robert Saleh will still get looks as soon as next year as defensive backs, defensive line, defensive coordinator positions. I mean, if you're like a Ben Johnson type or Bobby Slowick and you're a young offensive coach who is going to be running a team for the first time, to have someone like Robert Saleh, who really has learned a lot of what works and a lot of what doesn't, and is a great defensive coordinator.
Robert Saleh,
right?
That's
I think schematically it's a big issue. I think from a play calling standpoint, I really like Ulbrich, but I think that he's kind of in over his head trying to call the plays defensively and manage the game. And we don't yet know what he's like on his own as a defensive play caller. And I think Robert Saleh showed the ability to do that. And also the way he kept his defense motivated through all of those years of terrible quarterback play. I don't think Robert Saleh handled it perfectly. Yes, that team had too many penalties during his time, and they have too many penalties after. And I will still never forget when he was asked about Zach Wilson a few games into Zach Wilson in 2023, and Robert Saleh said that the people around him need to play better also. Yeah. I think he probably wishes he could take that back. That said, I do think he commanded a level of respect in that locker room. I do think that he got guys to buy in for him. And you really don't often see defenses play as hard as they did for Robert Saleh when their offense is so bad, because it's kind of like, well, why are we doing all of this when the other side of the ball isn't picking it up? And so I think he should still be if not a top 5 defensive coordinator candidate next year, probably top 10.
I think he should be a head coach. I really do. I think
but he's not going to get that chance right away.
I mean, Adam Gase
his record was very bad in the Jets.
I get that, and it won't happen. But I honestly wouldn't shy away from it either. I think he's a good coach. That just was stuck in the most impossible situation you could be stuck with. We've seen the Jets kind of have coaches who are pretty good coaches who just get ruined because they're on the Jets. I don't. It's kind of like the Lions for many, many years pre Dan Campbell.
Even Joe Flacco couldn't overcome the Jets.
Yeah. Even Joe Flacco, the great Joe Flacco.
Elite.
Yes,
Joe
I agree
Flacco.
with you. I agree that Saleh's not going to get a job next year, but I think that he's going to be rehabilitated really fast, and I think he's going to get another job, and I think he's going to be good at it the second time he gets it.
Yeah, well, the one thing I know is that Frank is wildly inconsistent in everything he thinks. Why? Because power rankings are out and they suck. We're going to rip them apart next. The power rankings are up. As usual, they are trash. Frank, defend yourself, good sir. I don't even try and be nice anymore. Look, let's start with the fact that you brought the Browns all the way from 30 to 20. You're sitting here telling me that the Browns don't stand a chance at winning their way out to get into this playoff conversation, but now they go up 10 spots because of Jameis Winston? What are you talking about, you coward?
Yes, I was not a math major at the University of Wisconsin at Madison, but I could tell you that the Browns need to go 8-1 the rest of the season to make the playoffs, and that ain't happening. But you look at this team right now, if you look at the Jameis Winston Browns, we're just starting 0-0 for everybody. Where would you there's some teams that are above them that I probably could have put the Browns ahead of them, because I have more faith that sorry, Denver fans. Who would you rather face right now, the Browns or the Broncos? You'd probably rather face the Broncos, right? They have a much better record. They're ahead in my power rankings. But this is a different team with Jameis Winston. They're not going to go 8-1. That ain't happening. But I think that this Browns team for the rest of the season is going to play playoff football. They're not going to make the playoffs, but they're going to play at that level. And so even putting them at 20, I know it was a huge jump up. it was kind of a little bit of a middle finger to the Browns for punting their season on a $230 million quarterback who didn't deserve to have his feelings coddled. But I do think that this team is going to be a top 15 team the rest of the way. And I don't even think you guys would disagree with that.
Would you have changed where the Colts are now that you know that Joe Flacco is going to be their starter?
I probably would have bumped them up,
long term?
Yeah, I think they're better. I think they're just better. They're straight up
better.
But
I'm like looking at the teams beneath the Browns for you, and I think that's the only team that I'm like, maybe if you're making on that. But I mean, I think what's interesting is that we kind of forget after the Jets had absolutely no bump from firing Robert Saleh, from getting Devontae Adams, all of that, that most teams, when they make a decision that is in the best interest of their roster and in the best interest of winning now, do have that shot of adrenaline. And I think that Cleveland, like the players have honestly been through so much in terms of all the Deshaun Watson stuff that I do agree with you that not having to deal with him anymore, quite frankly, this season
just having
is
an
going to make a difference.
They have an adulted quarterback finally.
Okay,
it's weird to call Jameis.
No.
I know Jameis is going to throw them out of some games or whatnot, but they have a competency at quarterback that they haven't had.
On field
adult.
I still think that
on the field.
Yes, maybe Jameis Winston looks like an upstanding citizen compared to the allegations against Deshaun Watson, but not actually.
I get that. But it was so funny to one of their linemen. I can't remember who was quoted in the story. I was reading up on the Browns this week, and one was like talking about how excited he was and how he gave energy in the huddle. And he's like, sometimes I don't know what Jameis is talking about, but it was still really firing us up. Like that kind of sums up the Jameis Winston experience.
Yeah, you may not have been a math major, but you were a molecular science major because you're splitting hairs on this Browns thing. That's fine. It's fine. It's fine. The Eagles.
He was cooking that up for a couple minutes.
The Eagles up to 8 between Pittsburgh and Washington. And so that one a little bit interesting to me. I think Pittsburgh, you're giving the Steelers a lot of love, but I can't fault you because we do have to acknowledge Tomlin's basic. I'm paraphrasing Tomlin saying never confuse good for great. I think has really spoken. I'm impressed that the Eagles are up to 8, but also I kept looking at that Pittsburgh thing thinking, man, we're sleeping on how good the Steelers are.
We might be. We absolutely might be. With the Eagles, though, it's something Jori talked about before. When they've had A.J. Brown in the lineup, they're 4-0 and they look like a different team. Like it has always been super pretty for them.
And don't forget the Lane Johnson bump.
That too. I just think that this Eagles team is going to be really good the rest of the way. I mean, they got through their injuries. No, they weren't playing the best of football. Yes, Nick Sirianni was yelling at fans or whatever, but we have seen them go on the road 2 straight weeks and put up 20-point wins on the road. And we talked about this, Fitz, and I'm going to grant you, the Bengals might be a bad team, right? But still, to go on the road in the NFL, win by 20 is tough to do. They've done that 2 straight weeks. So I think the Eagles are on the right track. Their team, I think they are the best team nobody's talking about. And it's weird because we always talk about the Eagles, right? But nobody's talking about, like, the Eagles are back. They're ready to go win a Super Bowl because we're all talking about the Commanders and all these other teams. And I think the Eagles are just as good as any one of them as long as A.J. Brown is healthy and the rest of the team is remotely healthy too.
Right. I definitely think the wild cards in the NFC could easily be the Eagles, the Packers, and the Vikings. But I think when you look at it, we're not really going to actually know how good Philly is for at least a month because they've just played the Saints, Bucks, Browns, Giants, Bengals. Okay, a couple of those teams are okay, but not
look
great.
At the schedule
and
coming
now
up.
Jaguars, Cowboys, Jaguars and Cowboys. So then after that, you're going to go Commanders, Rams, Ravens. And that's when I feel like we'll really get a sense for, is this team good or are they going to be great? But yeah, I think that's what's funny to me when everyone was like, is Sirianni going to get fired early? Or you guys were ready to fire the Chicago Bears coaches because Caleb Williams wasn't immediately ready to go.
I'm ready to fire the Chicago Bears coaches after Sunday night.
I'm sorry. I'm still ready to fire him.
I'm ready
I just think that you guys think everything can be perfect in a zero-sum game, and I just really think that's unrealistic. But in terms of the Steelers, I do agree with you. I think also one of the reasons that you should have optimism in them is obviously they've had a great defense for a while. They get the Mike Tomlin bump in terms of how many wins they're going to play. And you have a quarterback who Russell Wilson he made some really good plays the first game, but he also underthrew some passes. And that happened a lot less in his second game. And he was a lot more intense. I mean, his stats look okay, but there were 2 touchdowns called back, one because of a holding call and the other George Pickens got his right foot in twice as opposed to his right and left foot in. So he really basically threw 4 touchdown passes in terms of what you need from him out of the quarterback position against a good defense. I know that the Giants aren't a great team, but they are a good defense. And I think when you look at it also, not only is he playing quarterback at a high level, and figuring out the play action, which is helping the running game. It's helping the protection because he's not just holding on to the ball too long, which a lot of people thought Justin Fields would have given you an advantage in that area. I also think that he has gotten George Pickens engaged again, and the ability to do that is like so hard to understate or overstate.
My favorite Joriism. She's our favorite nerd in all of sports media, because the minute that catch happened and my phone's blown up and people are like, wait, so 2 feet down isn't 2 feet down? And Jori had not only immediately tweeted it out, but she tweeted out with the picture from the NFL rule book with everything laid out for you in a way. I was just, boop, I retweeted that, started texting it to all my buddies. I'm like, look, if you want the rules, Jori's going to give them to you. Jori came through right there. That was a powerful move by her. Make sure you follow her on social media.
The rule did not say
two.
Thank you, Fitz. Thank you. Yeah, it's not 2 feet. It's both feet.
Yeah. That's broadcasters should start reshaping the way they call that in games now, and I'm sure they will. Thursday night football game, we have a juggernaut of a matchup, really one of the single greatest NFL games you might ever see in your lifetime. Houston at the New York Jets. The Jets favored by 1.5. Stephon Diggs, ACL tear, out for the rest of the year. Before we get to the game, I just want to quickly say, every time a fan sits there and says, why are players selfish about their contracts? I look at this. Like Stephon Diggs put himself in a situation where he chose to put himself back on the market in a year. Now he has a torn ACL, right? Like, so in a world where teams can simply do whatever they want to players whenever they want, anytime a player fights for their money, I never begrudge them of that, because at the end of the day, a player never knows when an ACL is going to impact not just this year, but it could impact the money he gets next year. And now all of a sudden, if he was out there spending them millions in advance, might look a little different. So, just a reminder to fans that players can look out for their own bank accounts, Frank.
Yeah. And Brandon Ayuk is a good example of that, too. Onto this game, I hadn't looked at the line until today, actually. And somebody was like, because the Jets are favored. And I'm like, no, the Jets aren't favored in this game. That's ridiculous. Like, yeah, go look it up. Jets are favored. And I looked it up, and I could not believe it. I get it. Nico's out. Diggs is out. I need one of you to explain to me how on earth this Jets team is favored over any good team. And Texans are a good team. I don't care if Stephon Diggs and Nico Collins are out. This is still a good team. What am I missing here? Why are the Jets favored over anybody right now? This is an easy pick for me. It's Houston all day. I thought Houston was going to be like a 3.5-point favorite in this game. I don't understand how you could look at this Jets team losing to Jacoby Brissett and the Patriots last week and say, yeah, that team should be favored over the 6-2 Houston Texans. Like, explain to me. Somebody explain this madness to me.
I think that this is one of those things where you're like, let's just look on paper. Who should be able to win this game with Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams and Sauce Gardner and Garrett Wilson? And sometimes you got to factor in the vibes. And the vibes are very bad with the New York Jets right now.
Bad. They're just not a good football team either. I don't care about their talent. It's not a good football team.
I guess one thing that you could say if you believe in the Jets is maybe a few weeks into the Todd Downing play calling experience, you are going to figure out, oh, now Stone's taking the Jets. He's writing in our dog.
Yeah, because we're all taking Houston, right?
We're all taking Houston.
Fine. No, I'm taking the Jets now, too. Last week, I doubted the Rams, and I was like, I really feel like I should do it. I'm going to the game tomorrow. I don't know which is a better story, and that's obviously what I'm really rooting for, is someone to give me a good story, but no, I'll take the Jets. I think there is something to be said. Like, Aaron Rodgers does tend to figure things out eventually. Now, I also think he might do it against like a Texans team that just lost their receiver and then sink back into misery, but I'll give it to him for this week.
I think we have been, as a collective society, tripping over ourselves to find reasons to figure out why Aaron Rodgers is going to get it figured out.
Yeah.
Nah, I'm done.
Yep.
I'm done.
I was there. I went through the 12-step program, and I'm done. I've quit the Aaron Rodgers is going to turn the Jets around addiction I had. So hopefully others can follow suit and realize that this Jets team's bad. It's just not working.
Okay, but what about the fact that Jeff Ulbrich said that this is a moment of darkness and they're going to have to work to get out of it? I think that he was pandering to his quarterback on the darkness.
Had to be, right? Had to be.
Stone just typed in, hard to lose 6 games in a row. I will remind you, Stone, New Orleans has lost 6 games in a row. Also, Carolina's lost 5. We're going to say it's hard for Carolina to lose 6 games in a row? No. The Jets, Jets, suck. That's what we all know at this point.
The hardest part about losing 6 in a row is losing the first 5, and they've done that. So, this is bad. They're just in a bad way right now. And the vibes aren't good. And, if look at the Jets cover. Salute to you. Good job.
Frank was sure that Brandon Ayuk was getting traded. And
oh, I'm wrong a lot. I am wrong a lot. But I was right about the Commanders, wasn't I, guys? Hey,
Look, it doesn't matter how many times you're wrong. It matters how loud you are when you're right. I learned that a long time ago. I mean, but Stephen A. makes millions on that philosophy. What are we talking about?
I give the Jets a win now, and then they'll lose to the Cardinals, the Colts, and Seahawks back to back.
I can see it.
Okay. All right. Stone doing God's work behind the scenes. Sorry to trash your takes. We should let the world know Stone got off the schneid last week because he picked against us and he was right. So Frank has picked 6 times correctly. Jori 4, me 3, Stone 1. All right. So, but Stone didn't get involved until late. So I love this. And he sort of gets strong-armed into those picks. So we'll keep you updated on how it goes. But we appreciate Stone's work as always. Follow us on social media. You know how to do that. We'll be back Friday for what's now being called Feisty Fridays. I really wanted I wanted to, term it FU Fridays without the politeness because all C-Rob and Frank ever do is seem like they're hopped up on a bunch of cocaine and they just argue with each other. I can't speak to the drugs, but I can't speak to the arguing. Rate, review, subscribe. Tell your friends, your family, your enemies. Tell everybody to hang out with us every single episode. We appreciate you guys listening. Thanks so much and enjoy your week.